Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to Business Innovators Radio. This is your host, Constant Taylor. Today we have a very special guest on the show, and they're going to share some very powerful information with us. So, if you're looking to increase your personal and professional effectiveness, then you've come to the right place. Our special guest today is Cindy Solomon. Cindy has been speaking professionally for over 20 years. Cindy speaks primarily on customer service leadership, and courageous leadership. Cindy speaks both nationally and internationally and is based out of San Francisco. Cindy has written 2 books, including The Rules of Woo, Capturing the Hearts and Minds of Today's Customers, and The Courage Challenge Workbook. Cindy, that's quite a bio. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Constant. I'm thrilled to be here.
I'd like to kick off the show by asking you to tell us about your speaking business, the types of groups you speak to, and the content that you speak on.
Absolutely. Well, I have the great pleasure of talking to audiences large and small around the world about 2 primary topics. One is, how do you create exceptional service regardless of product price, industry? Number one, which I think so many of our listeners probably struggle with every day inside their organizations. And number 2, how do you create courageous leadership within your organizations such that you can take advantage of market opportunities and create true innovation regardless of industry?
Now, as I was doing my background research and preparing for our interview today, the subject of courageous leadership really piqued my interest. Could we start by diving into that and telling us what the components are of that and how you actually get that across to the organization?
You bet. I started this research on courageous leadership about 10 years ago now, and to this point, we've interviewed over 10,000 people, both within organizations as well as individuals in all walks of life, all socioeconomic backgrounds, all industries, and all levels. And we've determined some pretty extraordinary things around this idea of courageous leadership. And I think, Constant, many of your listeners will experience this feeling where you're sitting in a meeting, you're sitting trying to solve a problem within your organization, and you will have that momentary thought of, I wish I had the courage to. And in that moment, you have that point of inflection where you can decide to take action or not take action. And we were trying to understand through this research what separated great companies from companies that maybe, and even individuals, companies and individuals who were taking those courageous leaps from those individuals who maybe weren't, who were hesitating or missing the opportunity. And it came down to this idea of courage. And during this research, we identified 4 types of courage, as well as some trends that we thought were really fascinating. One is that we discovered courage is entirely personal. You can't tell somebody they're courageous or not. It's something that we personally have to come to a conclusion and action on our own. The second thing that we discovered was that courage can be learned. It's simply another tool that anyone can put in their toolkit to build their courage skill. And there's a wonderful quote that says, courage is like any other muscle. It grows with use. And I think that idea of building your courage muscle takes that thought of courageous leadership to a whole different level. And we work with companies to build that courage muscle. Okay.
So you mentioned that it's personal, it's learned. What are the other 2 components? The other components, the one other component is that most of us think we aren't. And interestingly enough, in our research, we found that only 1 in 3 of us believes that we're courageous. And the reality is every single one of us is courageous. We might get in moments where we don't think we are, but in fact we really are. And once we understand that about ourselves, create some muscle memory around those actions that do take courage for us, it allows us to build that muscle and take action on larger and larger opportunities. And I think that's what, when you look at, especially I'm here in San Francisco in the Bay Area, and I work with a lot of very large startups. And you see them taking these giant leaps
into potentially markets or opportunities that sometimes you shake your head at and say, wow, what were they thinking? How did they have the courage to do that? The reality is they've probably built their courage muscle a little bit at a time over smaller choices and maybe not so defining decisions that have allowed them to get to that big, giant leap that makes all the difference in the world.
Now, what about situations in which, because it sounds like this needs buy-in from the top, what about situations in which there are people in the organization, let's say middle management to the lower or base level employees that that operate in a fear-driven environment?
Yep. What a great question. And interestingly enough, we have found the opposite to be true. We have found that if you can grow people's courage skills at the front line, at the next level, at the middle management level, that's actually what alters the culture of an organization. Okay. And the example I sometimes use in this is you think of any sports team. If I as the coach am telling the team to be courageous and take chances, there might be some in the team that follow my lead and are inspired enough to fight through their fear. But if I arm every single person on that team with the skill of courage, boy, it gets a lot easier to move that whole team forward when the coach is telling you to be courageous. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one piece of the puzzle, is we've seen transformative cultural change inside of organizations when we arm the frontline and middle management with courage skills so they can, in fact, change the overarching culture. That's the first thing we learned. Second piece of the puzzle is it does take senior executive buy-in, but it takes more than words. They actually have to show their own courage muscles in order for the organization to model those. So the ideal scenario, and where we've seen organizations make transformational change, and we work a lot with organizations that are maybe going through a merger and acquisition or reorganization, or those difficult change moments that require courage to be able to get through them in a proactive way. And when you are arming the most people you can with the skill of courage, as well as ensuring that the senior executive team understands how to model that and to walk the talk, if you will, that's where you see entire cultures changing in a transformative way.
Very, very interesting. And the reason why I posed the question is I worked for a company where most of the people operated in a fear-driven environment. And what I'm going to do after we get this interview published and uploaded is I'm going to send a copy to my former boss of this corporation and let him listen to this. And this could be something possibly that he could utilize for the organization. But in this case, the fear actually started from the top and kind of went down, where failure was not an option, and kind of, people were afraid to try things because they were afraid to fail. Because if they failed, it could mean, the loss of their jobs.
Well, and it's really interesting. I think that's such an interesting insight because sometimes that barrier, it's funny, I did a lot of research on, I believe language creates a culture, and the word risk actually was originally published in the year 1640 in the Old English, and that word risk originally meant the imminent danger of assassination. And I think if you look inside of organizations where that fear-based management style is not only modeled from the top of the organization, but that's what any type of risk feels like inside that company. And if you look at companies who are doing really innovative things, in order to innovate, the very definition of innovation is failing in order to get to a positive outcome. So until we get comfortable and actually within our corporate cultures reinforce the process of failing in order to get to an innovation, we're unable to make that turn.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for covering courageous leadership. Now let's shift over to customer service. And I think the rules of Woo that's kind of what the premise and content of that book is about. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And ironically, how we started researching courageous leadership was really as an outgrowth of our work in customer experience. I became a customer service expert and a customer experience expert back in my corporate life. And when I transitioned over into speaking about it and helping companies become great at customer experience, we realized that what was holding companies back was the ability of leadership to embrace not just risk and failure, but the ability to be innovative as it related to creating and building upon customer experience. So that one thing led to another, and it's this endless cycle of creating extraordinary leadership that allows people to bring their very best to the party on behalf of customers. In our work with organizations around customer experience, all of our leadership programs are born out of the idea that when the customer comes first, and when leaders are focused on that ultimate outcome and have the skills to create consistent execution against customer experience, that's when you can really see transformative customer service and customer service statistics.
Okay. Is there a difference between woo and wow?
Yeah, what a great question. Actually, I've not been asked that question before. I think it's interesting when you look at the research behind customer service, 80% of customers who leave a company are actually satisfied. And so that really does help us understand that it takes so much more to create customer loyalty versus satisfaction. Customer satisfaction is a ticket to entry in today's world. Now we need to go a step further into creating true customer loyalty so people come back to us time and time again. I think that creates the perception that we need to wow customers. However, if you think about your own behavior as a customer, really what most of us want to build an ongoing, loyal experience with a company is for companies to make good on their promises to us 100% of the time. We don't necessarily need to be wowed, but we need to have a trusting relationship that what you tell us that you're going to do for us as customers will happen 100% of the time with 100% consistency. And I think that's where companies really fall down, is they have a couple of people who are great at customer service, and then they've got a couple of people who are mediocre, a couple of people who are awful. And the goal is to create 100% consistency 100% of the time. And that's where that idea of exceptional leadership comes in. Because until you have exceptional leaders who can do that and coach their teams to that, you can't get that 100% consistency.
It's your service and what you provide is so valuable because you've got companies out here. Let's take Comcast, for example. You would be a perfect candidate to work with Comcast on and improving their customer service and their wooing skills.
I could not agree more. As an unfortunate customer of Comcast, I could not agree with you more. And it's interesting because I think one of the catch-22s is I do believe most people get up in the morning wanting to do a good job and wanting to do what's right for their customers and their peers, their internal customers. And when that doesn't happen, we as the end-use customers are the ones that have to pay the price for that. And it's not about just those frontline employees understanding how to do that well. It's about leadership creating an environment where I can't wait to get in and do well, and I actually have the skills to be able to do it well.
That's a good point. One of the talking about risk being imminent danger of being imminent danger of being assassinated. What Comcast does is they actually tie in compensation to their customer service people so that if they can get someone to stay, then they get a bonus for that, or if they can retain someone. So you've got people that are keeping customers on the line for an hour or 2 hours trying to get them to stay.
Absolutely. Yeah, some of the work that we do with companies is helping them understand the behavioral outcomes of how they're paying people and how they're rewarding people. And that's such a great example. We worked with a customer recently in a call center environment where they couldn't understand why their service numbers were going, south so quickly. But one of the things they paid people on is the amount of time, the less time on the phone with the customer, the more you got paid. So call center employees were doing exactly what we told them to do, which was transferring people repeatedly because they didn't want to get dinged for having somebody on the line and actually solving their problem. So you have to really look at what kind of behaviors you're driving by the way you're systematically rewarding people.
All right. Excellent point. It starts with the value system of the organization. Do you value customer satisfaction, or do you value speed of service?
Absolutely. And it's looking at customer service as a revenue generator, creating customer loyalty as a revenue generator for companies rather than looking at service as a cost of doing business.
That's an excellent point, and I remember you mentioning that on your video when I was actually watching it on the website. Could you talk about that for just a quick second?
You bet. It's interesting because the research shows that a mere 5% increase in customer loyalty, meaning that of 100 customers, you keep and retain 5 more than you originally had, can increase the profitability of an organization up to 80%. And those numbers seem to make no sense at all when you look at, if I only do 5% here, it gives me 80% profitability. But the reality is, when you increase customer loyalty, you're generally increasing it for customers who are buying what you're selling. They want to be a customer of yours. You're providing them with something that they like and that they value. The second piece of the puzzle is if you retain them, the longer you retain them, the more committed the relationship becomes. So therefore, the easier it is to serve them, which increases profitability. And the third and probably most important piece of this is your advocate customers, the people who like you and want to stay with you. If you can activate those advocates, they will bring more customers to you that look like them. So the exponential increase in profitability when you're focusing on creating customer loyalty is amazing.
That's interesting. And one last point on that, just posing a question. When many companies will appear to treat their new customers, their new customer acquisition, much better than their existing customer base. For example, you've got a satellite service who will offer a new customer 1 year free service or 1 year 50% off. And if an existing customer calls in, hey, can I get the same deal? The answer is no.
Right. And again, isn't that an interesting value equation? It's, again, companies who are focused on the funnel, the inbound funnel of new customers versus ensuring that the customers that they have stay so they don't need to keep refilling the funnel, number one. And number two, that they're rewarding people for their ongoing relationship. And I think, I interact with United Airlines almost every day of my life, and I am a 2 million miler with United Airlines until this year. I've been a 1K forever. And the value that brings to me as a customer is zero. And yet I see, cheaper fares going to, more aggressive marketing and more aggressive pitches of nice things for the customers to have to people that they're trying to woo into the organization versus really solidifying the relationship they have with me and honoring that ongoing relationship.
This has been such a fascinating conversation. Unfortunately, we have to begin to bring it to a close. For our last 60 seconds, could you please share with the audience whatever message that is on your heart that you would like to deliver to them?
Absolutely. I'm going to do 2 quick ones. One is against customer service. If you want to create exceptional customer service for your customers, focus on helping your leaders become exceptional leaders. And as it relates to courageous leadership, I'd also suggest that the way to create courage throughout an organization and to build your organization's success in every line of work is to ensure that your people believe they can take action on behalf of their customer and their employee.
Excellent. Now, if our listeners would like to get in contact with you or speak with you or utilize your services, how would they do that?
The very best way is to come to my website at www.cindysolomon.com, or you can email me directly with any questions, thoughts, stories that I can be of service to you on at cindy@cindysolomon.com, and I'd love to hear from you.
Okay, Cindy, thank you so much for coming on the show. That was very fascinating and powerful information that you shared with our listeners.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.